Pass the 40 cause my mother's not looking.
What's going on, everyone? We're back with another episode of the Pass the 40 podcast. My guest today, Eric Newman, the coach. What's going on, dude?
You know, coaching it up on a Friday.
I see you put on your game-ready Celtic shorts, so I know you're coming to play today.
The season cannot get here soon enough, and for all of you Knick fans listening, it's now official. Kyrie will not be joining your basketball team. You still don't have a basketball organization, but one day soon.
We are in person, which is rare for Pass the 40 since many of my guests are not in New York. Eric and I happen to live sort of close to each other, so we're doing this in person, which I always like. Great to see you.
Yeah, we were overdue anyway.
Yeah, we were. It's about time we got together here.
The abrupt end of your pickup career was ill-timed. We've got to get you back out there, man.
I mean, family, life, age, it's tough to find time to get on the court.
Well, as I'll share with you today, fuck age.
Great way to get started. You ready for 40 questions here?
I'm ready.
Speaking of basketball, as that becomes a theme here, you have a court in your building. I know how therapeutic shooting around can be. How often are you down there putting up shots?
When I'm in town, I force myself to do 2 workouts a week down there minimum. And force myself is a poor choice of words. I mean, I did not move here on accident. I was looking at this neighborhood in Lower Manhattan as a great change for me, and a needed one as far as pace, quiet. You know, what we get for our money in this city is obviously a big thing, and I knew of the building where this court is, and I kind of hunted it down, and everything aligned really well for me. So it's therapeutic. It's huge for my mind-body connection, especially as a creative and as a producer. It's very important. So I'm down there, and it's not shooting around. It's doing the things that I used to instruct and do on the court with, my players and my kids.
Yeah, I noticed you use the word workout. That's a little different than just my version of shooting around these days. Speaking of that, where does the coach moniker come from? Your email address is coach. I addressed you as coach, and you just alluded to that. So
what's it's interesting. I think you and I knew of each other for a long time, but never met and bonded. And then when we started to play ball together, I was well out of my coaching career, but because of, I guess, the persona that was formed over the years, and hopefully, from what people tell me, a positive impact made, and my passion for the game and the fact that basketball and coaching basketball helped expose me to so many other things and opportunities, that I kind of kept that moniker, that persona. And, as a producer who does a lot of work in the field, managing teams, managing people, a lot of the philosophies and lessons learned from the basketball and coaching world, I apply to production and creative. So I am trying to incorporate new films and the filmmaking side of me into, whether it's my moniker or my social presence and my voice, but the coach, as I'm sure we'll explore during this time, is something that will always be part of me and who I am. And my closest friends, some of my closest friends' kids, my former players and students who are now either in college or out of college, I'll be walking down the street in Manhattan or wherever, and I'll hear someone yell out "Coach," and I'll turn around, and I always, it's like a nervous turn, like who am I seeing?
Right.
So it's fun though. It's a great part of who I am.
So now you moved on to production, as you alluded to, and you're living the freelance lifestyle. So what does the first hour of a normal day look like for you?
Well, you said it right there, normal day. There is no normal day.
Right. Good
Especially point. With what I've been fortunate enough to, have been working on for the last year in terms of different projects. If I'm in New York, and there's one of 2 different kinds of days. It's either a day where I'm getting out and about all over the city, meeting with people, planning, catching up, whatever it is. Or it's one of those days from home where I'm reviewing content, brainstorming, writing, and on calls. So I try to get some sort of activity in early in the morning, unless there's something pressing I have to get to at this desk behind me. And it's the love-hate of working for yourself, right? And it's the love-hate of your home as your workspace. So I love it. I enjoy it. But, it's no day's ever the same. But some sort of mental stimulant, if I can get down to the court, great. If I can go get a run on a treadmill, great. There's an iced coffee in my hand until we go down to like 40 degrees. And, at worst, I'm knocking out some push-ups before I start a crazy day in New York. And then when I'm on the road, it totally depends on what I'm shooting that day.
Of course. When you're looking to get involved in a new project, what are the elements that you're looking for? Like what makes a good story to you that makes something like, this is something I want to be involved in?
I think I'm still trying to figure that out.
Yeah, that's an ongoing process.
No, so, I have this unique mix of growing up around the arts because of my parents. My mom's an artist and an art teacher. My father is very passionate about film and music, and to his credit, he did what he had to do, creating a business to support our family and make sure that we didn't want or need for anything growing up. So my brother and I grew up in a very lucky situation, 20 miles outside the city in the suburbs, and we played sports all growing up. And the reason why I'm telling you this background is because everyone always perceived me as athlete and jock and only into sports. At the same time, I was getting a free film education and an education in the arts from my parents.
From home, right.
My father has 3,000 movies in the house. So comprehend that, 3,000 movies. It started with video discs in the late 70s, which were the equivalent of laser discs. Then he had VHS and beta tapes, which my friends loved to come over and move around to see if he'd notice, which was hilarious. And I would lose my mind because I'm like, he's gonna notice.
What type of organization system did he have?
Well, here's the thing. He thought he had one. He was full of shit. It was on memory for a long time. And then when I got my first laptop in college, and he was just beginning the tape to DVD change, I said, let me and my brother Todd, let's come up with a system. And he just couldn't relinquish control of his thing. So we never did it. And now he pretends to know where things are. And, my mom and my brother and I all agree that, there is no system. It's his madness. So as far as great story goes,
yeah.
I grew up with long form. Obviously, my work in sports content has, retrained me to think short form in many ways. From the sports doc side, I think some of the things that we were both attracted to when 30 for 30s came out is we were reliving this history that we were familiar with, but we were learning something new. So from the unscripted angle, I need to be entertained, I need to be captivated, I need to care about these characters for good, bad, or ugly. But I need to learn something. I need to really be pulled in. As far as scripted goes and films that, we would pay to go see in the movie theater, I thankfully, between my childhood and going to undergrad at Ithaca, where I took a lot of film classes my last 2 years, I was taught how to look at things. And it was extremely eye-opening because it showed me why I was in love with movies. And when you're breaking down a film, I'll never forget seeing North by Northwest, the great Hitchcock film, for the first time in a film class. And they're teaching you about techniques and why he did this and why this scene is lit like that and shot, reverse shot to build tension between characters. And it was crazy. It was really eye-opening. So I'm very diverse in the types of stories I'm into. As far as present day goes, and sorry for the tangent, they've got to be powerful, they've got to be meaningful. And the reason why I became a storyteller is because of the life experiences I was having, because of the things that I would see and do in New York, my love for storytelling, and now in present day, the things that unfortunately continue to plague our world. I'm trying to play more of a role in telling those stories. It just so happens that my core and my success and evolution has happened in sports, but that's not where I'm going to stay.
Do you have a celebrity crush?
Presently, no. My only crush is my girlfriend.
All right, how about not presently? How about 10 years ago? Did you have a celebrity crush?
10 years ago.
Or even growing up as a kid, did you have a, Tiffany Amber Thiessen type?
Oh, so as a kid, I was Alyssa Milano all the
Okay.
way, and then as my tastes changed, I was on that Kerry Washington bandwagon before anybody was watching Scandal. Before she was on the cover of all the magazines, I had seen her in a bunch of films where she had a smaller role, and I was just like, "Who is that?" And then obviously the whole world now knows. I'm really good at scouting before they get on the big radar.
Good judge of talent. Nice upside.
Good
early
upside.
in the career.
Good upside, yes. Very versatile.
If you could have a drink with a fictional character, who would that be?
That's really good. And when I was printing out your questions, I was trying not to look, but that's one of the ones I saw, and I started to stress on it.
That's one of the ones I sent you a couple months ago anyway,
yeah.
so you should have had some
Yeah.
thought about that.
I did. I've lived in the fiction world in my mind for so long. This is the part where you're going to go in and you're going to edit this pause. Give me 30 seconds.
No, I'm not. We lean into the silence. Got a bunch of movie posters.
I
on the
know.
wall
I'm
right there.
I'm deciding between movie characters right now.
Well, shoot out a couple that you're thinking. It could be any.
I start with Michael Corleone, and
Great one.
then listen, people think I'm crazy in general, but Clint Eastwood's role as Dirty Harry is so incredible and so iconic, and only gets better every time you watch it. And I just think he's an amazing character. So Detective Harry Callahan from the San Francisco Police Department would be a great guy to have a whiskey with.
It's a great one. What's a piece of advice you would give to your 20-year-old self?
Breathe and be patient. And it's funny, I had a catch-up lunch earlier in the week with my attorney, who's actually a parent of a kid I used to coach, and it's like a great example of the relationships you build with people, and almost like an uncle / big brother figure to me. And we're just talking about like the journey, and at the age of 20, I don't think I fully understood what it was like to not have something go your way. And I had to learn that through the college sports experience. And I wish, and it's still paying off to this day, but at the time I didn't realize the life lesson I was going through. And I wish I...
Just experiencing adversity for the first time?
Adversity, thinking I should be playing a lot and barely seeing the field and not seeing eye to eye with my coaches, which never happened to me before. You know enough about me as a over-the-hill pickup player. I'm very competitive, I'm very intense, I'm very passionate, and I carry that over to other things in my life. But there's a way to use that fire and that fuel and that frustration in a positive way. And I didn't identify with knowing how to do that until I was around 30 years old. Mm-hmm. So at 20, if I could have taken all that frustration and anger about things and turned it into my fuel for positive, that would have been definitely one thing. And breathing's part of that. So reactive, so tightly, so wound up for no real reason.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of 20-year-olds are like that, unfortunately.
Well, you know what they say, we are the product of our environment.
How did you celebrate your 21st birthday, speaking of that time of life?
Nothing huge. I'm a late May baby, which has me as a Gemini, which doesn't surprise a lot of people. So I was home from college, so it was the home best friends going out and just hitting a couple of spots and making sure I had 21 shots of whatever I put into my body that night. But it was being with my brothers at the time, and we're all connected to this day through ball and through our past. And no crazy story, no all-nighter in the city.
But you were out in Manhattan.
We did two things. We did a Long Island night, and then we did something else in the city. And
21 shots both times?
No, just once on Long Island. And I think they made sure I survived the evening. Didn't puke on anybody's shoes. Didn't embarrass my family. Not that night anyway. So, yeah. Damn, I haven't thought about that night. Probably in over 10 years.
What's something that you've tried that you'll never try again?
So I was never an experimental drug user. So, nature only. So I was always afraid of heights, right? But it was like specific things I would do, like go to the top of like the Splish Splash water slide, which is 80 feet high and steep, and I would have no problem with that. But like anything roller coaster or motion, my oldest friend and I, who you know, Ross Levine, who went to Michigan, I hope people find this interesting because my memory's kind of crazy. It's our sixth grade like graduation party at Adventureland, and we're up on these swings.
Love Adventureland, yeah.
And our swings get tangled in the air when we're moving.
The two of you.
The two of us.
Yeah.
So of course I think this is the end. And to this day, I'm never going back up on those fucking swings.
People used to do that on purpose. Like, you used to grab...
Yeah, this wasn't on
each other's
purpose.
swings,
No,
right.
this was awful. Yeah.
All right, so no more swings.
No more swings.
Makes sense. What's the best sporting event you've ever been to?
So I'm going to do my own podcast and book on this someday. As far as the
This
events.
one event? Or
No,
a number
the
of
events. The things I've been fortunate enough to get to and have these incredible life experiences at are like so much of what makes me who I am and a storyteller. So I'll give you a top three. I was at the 9/21/01 first game back at Shea Stadium after 9/11 when Piazza hits the home run. It's perhaps one of the most incredible things I've ever experienced in my life in a communal setting. Myself, two of my best friends from college, and one of my buddies' dads came with us to Lambeau for Giants-Packers minus 20 degrees NFC Championship, Favre's last game in Green Bay when the Giants beat them. And then we came back to New York the next morning, which was Martin Luther King Day Monday, walked back into our apartment 48 hours to the minute after we left, showered, grabbed a cup of coffee, walked across town, and watched Celtics play the Knicks at the Garden at 1 o'clock. Did that back to back. So that was magical. And then...
But nothing special about that Celtics-Knicks game, just the fact
the Celtics, well, the most special thing about it was in the third quarter, the Fox NFL music starts to play during a timeout, and Plexico Burress, Justin Tuck, and two other Giants are brought out to half court, sit first row. Me and my buddy look at each other like, okay, we're the only two other people who were at that game last night who are here.
Right.
And Paul Pierce, who I had not yet met at the time, walked over to them, showed him a lot of love, dapped him up, and then when I got to interview Pierce years later, when he came to New York to play for the Nets, I asked him if he remembered that. He said, of course, I love a winner. Why wouldn't I go talk to them?
Right.
It was pretty cool. So I'd say those two, and then I was at the Kemba Walker and Jerry McNamara Big East runs. So combine those together. I've had a heck of a run going to games.
I look forward to that podcast and book on this topic. If you won the lottery tomorrow, what are three things that you know you would do with the cash?
What kind of a lottery are we talking?
Huge, massive, generational.
Generational. So I would come up, number one, with a plan to help youth and homeless in need in New York City. That would be number one. And that's not sport oriented. That is, people need to have a place to live, to sleep, to eat, and to extend their life. And we've both been in New York a long time. The problem's not getting better, it's getting worse. So that would be number one. Number two is I would build some sort of a sports educational facility to make sure that my beliefs and my philosophies, which were instilled in me by my mentors and my parents, would live on forever through sport and education. And number 3 is I would then create a production company / movie studio that creates jobs and creates great content.
All positive things. If I don't win the lottery, I hope you do.
Thank you.
You're putting good stuff into the world.
Yeah. And I would take a quick vacation.
If you could have personally witnessed one event in history, something historic, what would you go back to see?
I love this question because I used to do this with what's the concert you would go back and see. So I'm going to flip the script on you on that. So live.
Well, I mean, people have answered this, the moon landing. I don't know if that means that they wanted to be actually on the moon or sitting in front of a TV in late 60s watching it. So it could be any event, however you'd want to experience it.
I'm a huge student of history, and I study leaders and leadership. And ironically, I went to John F. Kennedy High School, and I won't get into one of my history tangents here, but we still haven't made sense of the world since he was taken from us in 1963. So it might have been one of Kennedy's great speeches or Dr. King's great speeches, because those are moments that are forever etched into our society and there to inspire us and teach us, which I think a lot of people lose sight of when they're looking at history.
Absolutely.
What's your concert?
I think about this question, not the concert question, just the event in history, and some things that pop into my mind are like, being in the recording studio when 36 Chambers was made or something like that. But concert, one that jumps to mind is Dave Chappelle's Block Party. You ever see that movie where it's him putting together this block party concert in the streets in Brooklyn in Clinton Hill, and he brings this random marching band from the middle of the country and drives them up on buses for them to play. Oh, wow. Yeah, it goes around handing out tickets, and it's this one-day event, and it's the reunion of the Fugees. It's Mos Def and Talib Kweli. It's Dead Prez. It's Jill Scott, Erykah Badu, and it's
What year was that?
It's raining. It's an incredible like it's one of the few movies I would always leave on when I come across it. It's a great movie because it's Chappelle being funny plus ridiculous music. Kanye's in it, and a very young Kanye. This is probably late 90s, I would say.
Oh, I gotta check
maybe
that
early
out.
2000s. Definitely watch the movie. It's awesome.
So that brings me back
it's a great scene.
That brings me back to something, and it's ironic because of where we're recording this from, and so I love the Dark Knight films, right? And when I was transitioning careers, I was a little naive with what it was going to take to establish myself, regardless of what that lane was going to be in. So was I going to be a producer? Was I going to be a writer? Was I going to just be camera edit? And there was a listing for extras for Dark Knight Rises. And I never really had interest in acting. Some people have sarcastically told me that like you'd be a great asshole villain, which I guess I could believe. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go to this. I'm gonna go to this extras thing, and of course, I overslept, and I was in my early 30s, and I'm still like pretending to be responsible, but like only when it's convenient. And I get to the spot. It was like 19th Street. Between 5th and 6th, and the line literally is down the block to 6th, then wrapping around 6th back to 18th, and I get there, I'm like, I have other things to do with my day, I'm not doing this. And supposedly everyone who lined up got in and was in a frame at some point during the great fight scene downtown. And
so you should have stayed?
Well, I should have gotten my ass up early and been first in line. If I was actually working from what I shared before about your sports philosophies and that foundation, I would have been following that game plan. But at that point in my life, I was a little bit off course, as they say.
If you could give a TED talk on any subject, what would it be?
leadership through doing and action.
All right, nice succinct course title
Thank
right
you.
there.
Yeah. I swear I haven't thought about it at all.
Right. What are you most excited about right now?
I'm excited about how my my worlds and my journey to this point, everything seems to be converging at the right time, along with me working really, really efficiently and diligently at my craft. So, a lot of that is relationships. A lot of that is like really sitting down to think about ideas and story. And I've been so fortunate to meet so many incredible people through, it's basketball, but it's the things that have been attached to basketball. So whether it's people from the brand space or the creative space, and then since my time as a producer, being able to meet people in production and in the movie world, and it all just is coming together in this beautiful way. And ironically, like the year I turned 40, it all happened. And it's, like, I actually read something funny yesterday on Twitter, and one of my friends who's a successful, it's a small school college basketball coach, but like really smart. He's the head coach at Skidmore. They've been in the tournament like 6 of 8 years or 7 of 9, whatever. Mm-hmm. And he was commenting on the term grinding and saying how much he can't stand that term, because what grinding really is you're working 16-hour days for 20 years and you're miserable, right? And what we've been fortunate enough to do is identify the things we love to do and work tirelessly at them. But at the end of the day, aside from needing to lay down to charge our battery, it's not grinding. It's exactly what I wanted. So getting to the place that I've wanted to get to for a long time, and having it really working in a beneficial way for my career and just making me happy.
That's awesome. That is certainly exciting, and good timing for your for Past the 40 podcast here. Let's say you have to go on a long road trip from New York to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and you have to bring 3 people with you. Can't be family members. Who's joining you in that car?
How long is that drive? 4 days?
Couple days.
5 days?
Yeah.
So for the sake of the relationship I'm in, she's not going to come. Because I don't think that would be good for her.
Fair enough.
4 days. I have this, I have my crew. I have many circles of friends, some of which through ball and through our common connections. And we've been on many road trips before, so it's my college crew. We've been to Bonnaroo down and back twice, and many games. So I'm going to go with my Ithaca College 4.
I'm stuffing an extra guy.
I'm stuffing the extra guy in. So, yeah. So and that's who I went to Lambeau with, and those are the guys I want to go on a road trip with.
What 3 words would those guys use to describe you?
Loyal, intense, and then just plain old coach.
Let's say I asked them one more question. How would they finish this sentence? I love Coach. He's the greatest, but I wish he were a little less blank.
I can't really say dialed up anymore, because that's not me.
You've toned it down a bit?
I've definitely toned it down a bit. I'm making it no lie that I will be in your face this basketball season with Boston Celtics everything, because of how they're set up on the basketball front. So, I can be pretty eccentric from time to time. So I think dialing that back is probably healthy for everybody.
What's an accomplishment that you're proud of?
Creating my own niche, creating my own space. It's a great question, and I've battled with I've battled with this theme because for so long I wanted to work on things and with people that were already established, that I had great relationships with, who are doing great things, and I've had the privilege to do that, and it's helped me grow. But I thought when I wasn't doing that, I was failing in my pursuits, when in reality, those are stops along the way to get you to where you should be, in your own space, in your own lane, creating your own visions, whatever they are. So finally doing it, but arriving at it, you know, and I shared a few things with you before we started to record about something I'm building now in the content space that has to do with, you know, ball and storytelling, and hopefully I'll have the opportunity to share more with you once it's more solidified. But it's like, I could have been doing this 2 years ago, but it was either something within me that wasn't ready to do it, or the group of people that I've now assembled had not yet been linked, whatever it is. But it's carving out my thing and going after the things that I want to do instead of just trying to work on cool stuff that's already established, which I'm very thankful for, but
Sure.
That can't be the end all be all.
What's the worst job you've ever had?
Wow. So one thing about that group of friends, and many of my friends, they can't believe how many fucking jobs I've had. I mean, it's crazy. So the worst job I had was in 2002 when I was coaching. I was coaching high-level AAU basketball, and I had just finished my first season coaching at the high school level at my high school. I was trying to figure out how to make money before I eventually moved my life to New York City and became a teacher and a coach and did all that. So I'm like, oh, I got to work in sports. For 6 weeks, I was doing corporate sales for the New York Mets out of the basement of Shea Stadium.
What
That
did
was
that entail?
the worst job
You're just
I've ever had.
calling companies and trying to get them to give you money?
Well, first it entailed waking up at my parents' house at 23 years old.
Not that cool.
Not cool. Love my parents to death. The house is still there. House is great. It's a great place to go hang out. Waking up there when you're 23, when your parents are like, I wonder what my son is going to turn into. What is he doing?
Yeah.
Not good.
Yeah.
Then sitting in traffic from the South Shore of Long Island to Flushing every day in a shirt and tie and some really bad pants. That also sucked. And then you're on the phone. And they hired me because I had someone call and recommend me, which I'm forever grateful for. But they thought I was going to be really good at the job because I started talking about Glengarry Glen Ross during the interview, which is one of my favorite films. But that does not make me a closer on the phone. You know, I'm a closer in life.
You can quote.
I'm
on the gold
getting
here,
to it.
right?
I can quote it all day. We can ABC that shit all day. But I wasn't closing tickets, and thankfully I had the wherewithal.
So you stopped it.
I was
after
just
6
like,
weeks.
yeah. I'm like, listen, this isn't working for me, and clearly you guys thought I was going to be something else. So, yeah.
Who's the best Kevin to ever play forward for the Celtics?
Wow. And isn't it ironic how closely they're linked? By the way, so
They sure are.
I'm going to show you this. I know we're on a audio podcast with a little video support here. So, as much as I love the guy that I grew up watching, I recently was at the NBA 2K launch event because the NBA subject DeMarcus Cousins, who I'm lucky enough to be doing a documentary on, was in town for that. Mm-hmm. And I did not know that this Kevin was going to be there. So I had my first meeting and conversation with Kevin Garnett. And he is my favorite Kevin to ever play any sport at the pro level. One of my favorite teammates as a kid was my high school teammate Kevin, and he knows how I feel about him as a teammate and a brother. But Kevin Garnett changed my life in terms of watching him compete and lead every night for the Celtics. And I recently told this story I didn't tell him. That would have been way too much for our first meeting. But, Kevin Garnett gets traded to the Celtics when I am about to turn 30. And at the time, I was very stuck in my life. I had made my way through basketball. I was a full-time teacher. I was doing clinics. I had already had a lot of great Nike experiences. I had been to China. But I didn't know, all right, what's next? What am I doing? What control do I have? Do I know the right people to figure out how to get to the NBA on a bench or do something? And I felt like I was at the mercy of New York. I was going out all the time. I was partying. I was loving it, but I knew you can't stay here, right? Mm-hmm. You can't maintain this.
Sure.
And the Celtics got Garnett. And I watched 77 of the 82 games, something crazy. And during the season, my apartment was robbed on a weekday in broad daylight when my roommates, who were two of my best friends in the world from college, Brian and Colby, we were all at work. And it was a Monday. I had just finished losing another game to Poly Prep. I coached at Fieldston. I always lost JV games to Poly Prep. And, we would always text or email during the day, but there was never a phone call. And my buddy Colby's calling me. It's 6:30. I'm 10 minutes from getting into the car. And my rule was I get in the car and I leave the day in the car. The loss, the frustrating practice, the good, the bad, whatever. So I'm figuring he wants to, get dinner or whatever. And before I can get a word out, he's like, you need to come home right now. I just got home. Our apartment was robbed and, your shit's fucked up. And, thankfully it was only things, mm-hmm. but it was meaningful things. It was my MacBook Pro with all my freelance video work on it that I was doing for Dime Magazine at the time, which for me was huge, getting into the content space on the side. My camera, the watch my brother gave me for being the best man at his wedding the summer before. All our video games, our Xbox, but no one fucked with the flat screen and no one it was obviously quick, get what we can grab and go. But you felt helpless, and I never had that feeling before. The cops came, they didn't do anything. We lived above a bar, so we all kind of just looked at each other. We're like, all right, we're just going to go downstairs tonight, get wasted, and call in for work tomorrow. And when reality set in the next day, I needed to figure out how I could turn this negative in my life into a positive, and I refer back to what I was saying before about what I would tell myself at the age of 20. And this was that moment. And what Garnett did every night was take all that fire and all that fuel, whether he was riling himself up or he was arguing with a ref or shit-talking with someone on the other team, and he would put it all towards the effort on the court and with his teammates. And that is exactly what I started to do in every other aspect of my life. Teaching, coaching, leading clinics, getting after it. And it's no accident that I was able to start my own program again, doing clinics, and then eventually get the opportunity to lead World Basketball Festival in 2010 and do content on the side all throughout that. And that is eventually what led me to believe, okay, I can take the game and take my ability as a creative and a storyteller, which needed to be honed and evolved, but I can take that and go create a career out of it, which is ultimately what I decided to do. So the short of that long answer is Kevin Garnett.
KG.
All
right. If you had to live on a different continent permanently, where would it be? You don't have to name the continent. It could be a country or city on said continent.
No, so
not North America.
I've thought about this, and I'm one of those. I'm one of those naive people that didn't think the 2016 election could go the way it did, and I said a joke to people all the time. I said, if this goes the wrong way, I'm Toronto in the summer and Caribbean in the winter, and I'm still fucking here. So because of my roots and my heritage, going to live in Tel Aviv is something that I would really consider doing. I've been to China. I was in Vietnam in May, which was right before I turned 40, which was a great experience. I've been to Australia, but I don't think Asia is for me as far as living goes.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think Israel is where I'd be, and that's a different discussion for a different day in terms of the geopolitical ramifications. But we can do another chapter on that. That's the Chris Heller bonus coverage. By the way, where's our 40? What's the deal?
We passed it. We passed it. What are you curious about?
I'm curious about how our generation can really pull ourselves together to make this world better before the young people take over. Because I think for so long we were the young people, and we didn't necessarily think the world needed changing from where we're from and the perspective that we had, but you and I are also cut from a different cloth than many of the people I think we grew up around. And I know for me, I started seeing a lot of things that needed changing through sports and spending time in inner cities where I was the minority in spaces, and learning through experiences and running clinics and talking to people in their 70s who I met on 132nd Street in West Harlem when I was doing clinics there for a whole summer, versus 12-year-olds who, didn't know they needed to eat breakfast before they came to a 2-hour basketball clinic, and these are like exact things right now. But, the world changed for all of us in a huge way on 9/11/01 when I was 23 years old. So I look at that as a dividing line in my life. There were a lot of things happening in the world before then that needed changing and needed help, but how we were brought up in this safe, somewhat isolated bubble in the Northeast, we thought of the country a certain way, we thought of New York a certain way, and we thought everything was okay, and it's not. So I'm curious about how we can collectively work together to impart change before that opportunity passes us by, because of resources, because of energy, because of priorities.
Before we get old, basically.
I'm refusing to give in to what 40 used to mean. That's for sure.
I'm not saying we're old now. I'm saying we have time to do it before we age out.
Of course. Yeah.
One of the things.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things that you wrote in your 5 headlines was, he's trying to do too much. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, that's what my friends would say. You're trying to do too much. So we grew up in the 3-sport athlete generation. Of course, my example ties back to sports, right? But that was like the badge of honor. Like I was a 3-sport varsity athlete as a sophomore in high school. That was a big deal. That was something I wanted to make happen. It's something to this day that I'm proud of. It's something that laid a foundation for me in terms of time commitment, teamwork, training, all those things, right? And our society and our culture has turned into a culture of specialists in everything. It doesn't matter if you're a professional baseball or basketball player on television. It doesn't matter if you're in the finance world, whatever it is. And for me, I took pride in being a Swiss Army knife in production. I had to establish myself by shooting everything and editing everything. And even until recently catching up with people didn't realize, like, oh, you're producing now? Oh, you're directing stuff in the field right now? Oh, I always thought you were doing this or that. Mm-hmm. And being a Swiss Army knife helped me establish myself, but I think also hurt in helping me grow at a pace that I thought I should have been growing at. But That's on me. That's on me for not identifying that. That's on me for trying to do too many projects at the same time, trying to do too many things at the same time. So that's where that comes from.
What is a skill that you want to acquire in the next 40 years?
I never played an instrument as a kid. Like, it was like the forced thing. Like, I went from like the trombone to the tuba to the mini tuba to like, what time's baseball practice? I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
So I feel like learning an instrument would be very rewarding and therapeutic. I'm terrific on the air guitar. I think my personality could fit the guitar or the drums. I cannot sing.
You should get into that. That's actually a common answer to this question, and one that's
Oh, really? I wanted to be different.
and one that's on my short list as well. What's a
Okay, so I did have the delusional fantasy of thinking that I was going to retrain my body to get up on the rim again and actually try to dunk a basketball. But there's no chance in the world that will ever happen. So,
maybe?
I mean,
Like it's possible. I don't
It's
know if that's where
possible.
you're going to focus your efforts.
no, it's possible. It's possible.
What is a great book that everyone should read?
So the other thing that I have to get back into is being like an avid reader again. I used to be an avid reader, and
Important.
technology has really, really hurt me in that way. I read so much online and so much short stuff. So
Yep.
my favorite basketball book that's just incredible storytelling is called Let Me Tell You a Story. It's the Red Auerbach book written by John Feinstein. As far as a general read goes, I mean, it's a book called Hope and Honor about a Holocaust survivor that,
Fiction?
no, Holocaust survivor that becomes a U.S. war hero in Vietnam. That's a hell of a read.
What are you afraid of?
It's funny, like, I search for an alternate answer, and there's only one answer. It's failure. That's my only. That's it. I've never been in a situation where I've been in situations of conflict before, but I've never been scared of somebody, and I've never been thankfully never been in a situation where I feared for my life. Failure.
Would you rather live another 25 years with no regret or 50 years with many?
25, no regrets. The regret thing, and I don't know what kind of self-examination you did when you were putting this together, because I know you thought about this show and this idea for quite a while, but like, regret was a huge thing I had to get rid of in order to evolve.
Well, especially if you're doing too much, right? You feel like you're missing everything if you're not doing everything.
Yeah, but it was relationship regret. It was, oh, we lost this game. Oh, you didn't play well. A friendship that may have dissolved. A work opportunity. Like, we've all been knocked on our ass before. Like, I'm not gonna compare myself to other people you've had on. We've all had our trials and tribulations, but like, there's a difference between learning from an experience and going back to it as a lesson and regretting something. And until I was able to differentiate those, I was slowing myself down. So, no regrets. 0 regrets, man.
What's your favorite Tarantino movie?
This is one of the hardest questions you could ask me about film, because I'm literally in love with like 4 or 5 of his films. So can I have a tie?
You're 40 years old now, Eric. You can do whatever you'd like.
No regrets. Pulp Fiction and Inglourious Bastards. Pulp Fiction, 16 years old, movie theater. Saw a lot of films with my parents that I was way too young to see, and films that were, graphic and violent and whatnot. That one I saw with 2 of my closest friends from childhood, and life-changing. Like, completely life-changing, and really informed me a lot on filmmaking and race and West Coast. And then Inglourious Bastards is the greatest revenge story that I could imagine, considering where I'm from and what my heritage is.
Pulp Fiction is the only movie I can remember that I went back to the theater. Like I saw it multiple times.
That's your only redo in the theater?
I think so. Well,
really?
The second half of my life, I really slowed down on movie consumption out in the world.
Okay.
I kind of like at some point I was like, I usually walk out of theaters unsatisfied, and so I'm like, I don't want to waste my time doing this.
I've had a number of. I need to go back and see that again. I saw Inglourious Bastards twice in 3 days in the movie theater.
That's on my short list of movies to rewatch. Actually, and I need a redo on that.
So it's on TV all the time, and I won't turn to the channel because I will not watch that in parts. I have to watch it from the start to the finish.
I now have it on my DVR from one of those nights that it's on all the time recently, and I'm just saving it for the right moment. What is a quirk of yours that a few people know about?
How loosely are we defining quirk?
Again, I will defer to the 40-year-old subject in the room. Up to you.
I got too much stuff. I'm really nostalgic. Those are 2 things.
Are you a hoarder?
I'm not a hoarder. I'm a pack rat. I almost knocked my glass over. No, it's just all my experiences, from jerseys to press passes to ticket stubs to Sports Illustrated. It's like,
Just can't get rid of them.
like, who wants to get rid of that stuff?
Right.
So I'm working on it. A friend of mine who John Dorfman, is the complete opposite. So like, he's like, when you move in, I'm coming over and I'm getting rid of your shit. I'm getting rid of your shit. And now, of course, I have more closet space than I ever had before. I'm like, oh, I can keep this.
Right.
Oh, those Air Force Ones that I haven't put on since 2009, they can go right there on that shelf. So that's something that is definitely a quirk and something that I'm looking to get better at.
When you think of the word success, who comes to mind?
Does it have to be somebody that I have a personal relationship with?
Definitely not. It can be, but it doesn't need to be.
I'm gonna give you someone who personal relationship, big brother figure. He's a guy who's got a following, but he's also like in the shadows with the public eye. So I can say his name. It's fine. His name is Paul Rivera. And we met in 2003 doing basketball camps. And he's 4 years older than me. So I'm the oldest in my family. I always was magnetized to big brother figures. And clearly that started through sports. And he went from trying to figure out who he was going to be off the basketball court to working for Dime Magazine. It was the reason why I went to China with Nike Basketball. Got a job at Nike Basketball. Managed the LeBron business. Went to Beats by Dre. Brought LeBron there. And now he is a partner in everything they do. He runs his sports marketing arm. He's a partner in Uninterrupted and Spring Hill. And I equate him with success because he saw the long game. And he saw what his talents, his relationships, and his ability to recognize what he wasn't good at, to inform him how to build a team around him and how to grow from there. So, really smart guy, but, you know, grew up Lower East Side, spent some time in Queens, spent some time in Jersey, and, you know, grew up rough and made his way through the game, and now lives a life where he's helping other people reach their dreams and employing people and putting great things out into the world. And it just so happens that part of what he does every day is work with, you know, the greatest basketball player in the world, who's changing the world off the court too. So I'd say that's success.
Absolutely. What would you have for your last meal?
So I've been known my whole life as this big eater, and I love to cook and I love to grill, and thankfully I've developed some new eating habits thanks to the relationship I've been in. So my girlfriend's a vegan, so, you know, the reliance on poultry and grilling and eating all that meat, like, those days are over. But it would either be a New York strip steak from this shows how little I've been eating meat lately, from Strip House, on 12th Street.
Yep.
Or, you know, the greatest sushi meal ever.
Wherever that may be.
Wherever that may be. Yeah.
You know where my head went, right, when you said my girlfriend's a vegan, right to Jules Winfield. My girlfriend's a vegetarian, which pretty much
makes me a vegetarian. Yeah, that's great.
If you could relive
as he's holding his corn muffin, the one that says "bad motherfucker" on it.
If you could relive a single day from your past exactly as it was the first time, what would you want to experience all over again?
That's a great question. There's a lot of them.
Good. That's a great answer.
There's a lot of them. Part of me being a pack rat is keeping every game tape. Like, even though it's been digitized, I'm not throwing out that VHS tape. And 2 years ago, I put together a little sizzle reel mini film for my high school basketball teammates for our 20-year anniversary of being seniors and winning the conference championship and having that experience together. And going back to senior night, needing to win that game for the conference championship and doing that over again, that would be pretty cool.
What's a great compliment that you received at some point that has really stuck with you, made a lasting impression?
When anyone tells me that I've inspired them and helped them, that is a much more flattering and valuable compliment than I could get if I was getting a compliment on my craft or my talent or my work. I it sounds cliche, but like, when you go from working with kids every day for 7 years and doing the camps and doing the clinics and always knowing in the back of your mind, like, all right, I'm exhausted today. I'm tired of this kid. I'm tired of these parents. I'm tired of this school administrator bullshit. But at the end of the day, and every morning that alarm would go off or I didn't want to get up, I always knew that I was helping kids and helping their lives. And that's been a void that I've had to figure out how to fill. And when I can fill that in production or in creative or in whatever, in a talk, and I can inspire someone and someone voices that to me, that to me is the best compliment I can get.
What's a pet peeve of yours?
Entitlement. Had to deal with it recently on a, I won't name client, I won't name shoot, but on a client shoot, like dealing with, I have a hard time dealing with people who are under 30, who don't have a clue, who think, oh, I've been at this job for a year, I should be doing this or that. And I'm like, you have any idea how long it's taken people to get where they are? But that started for me coaching private school kids. And like, we grew up well. Like, I don't know all the specifics of how you grew up, but you and I think connected because we love ball and we're good people and we have a good value system. And I never grew up like wanting for anything or needing anything, but there were values, there were principles, there were rules. There was a slap if there needed to be. There was a grounding if there needed to be. And then I start coaching these city kids who go to private school. And the difference between my upbringing and theirs was, they lived in a fancy apartment and went to a private school, but similar resources. We definitely didn't have as big of a bank account. But their entitlement and like lack of wanting to work. And, hopefully this is a little bit of an entertaining story, but like when I was at Fieldston, they thought I was crazy because every other game I'm boiling over in the first quarter. Well, I'm boiling over because we're in a 16-6 hole because you can't come out and compete because you're entitled and you're soft. So what am I supposed to do? Just not impose my will on the game? Like really? And my players would count how long it would take for the jacket to come off. They would count how long it would take for me to get up off of the chair. Because even though I would be mad at them, there was still a lot of love there. And because there was love there, I would will them to do things that I don't think other people would have the patience to do. But at the end of the day, you're trying to teach lessons. And that came from my coach, who was the head coach there. He's now at Riverdale. But he was my coach at camp. And you know what the camp connection and meeting means to me. And I happened to be part of a group of players growing up in high school and during the summer where we played together year-round. And we were very good. But there were times where we would just show up and think we were going to win because of who we were. And the lesson was, what are you going to get out of this if you don't work at it and get to the highest bar of your ability? What are we doing here? How am I preparing you for the rest of your life if I'm going to let you get away with that? So that ties into entitlement, and that ties into just like if you're not going to compete in whatever it is you're doing, and you're not going to work, then I can't really fuck with you.
How did the parents of those kids respond to you?
So one of the greatest things I ever learned from my high school coach was, and I'm really lucky, right? Like I never would have gotten away with the stuff I got away with as far as like motivation and passion and dropping F-bombs. Like I coached under my varsity coach at my high school. I then coached under the guy that coached me during the summers at Fieldston before I eventually was coaching in Lower Manhattan before I changed careers. And one of the greatest things that he ever taught me, and it was happening when I was his player, he's like, just so you know, like if you have an issue with playing time, I'm not going to talk about it with your parents. I'm going to talk about it with you. Because your parents have no idea what it is we're doing here, and they're not at practice every day. And I took that, and I used that, and I used my my ability to communicate, and I used the fact that I had a good pedigree of coaches and experience, and very few parents ever challenged me. I think some of them also thought I was fucking crazy, but their kids, for the most part, of all the kids I coached, and you're talking about years of kids and teams and clinics, they loved that I cared. They loved that I came prepared. They loved that I worked them that hard. So overall, I become friends with a lot of the parents, and still am to this day.
If you could have any musical artist perform at your next birthday party, who would that be?
Does he have to be alive?
No.
Jimi Hendrix. Poster's there for a reason.
All right, now give me one who is alive.
So I was really upset I missed the Pearl Jam Welcome Home tour. I didn't get to any shows. Little bit of a controversy in the Camp Wani Pearl Jam circle. This will be a different story for a different time.
That could be a whole new podcast right there.
Thought I was going to Fenway. Thought we had a core group, and then one guy from the core group got a ticket elsewhere. So I'm a big Eddie Vedder fan. He'd be number one for. No, it's still for one artist to experience Springsteen. It would be him.
What is something that all 40-year-olds should go and do or try ASAP? A call to action for our peers.
I did my first yoga class in about 10 years with my girlfriend 2 weekends ago. Like, if you're 40 and you are either lifting and running all the time, then that's going to help with your recovery and flexibility and advancement. If you're doing nothing, then you better start doing yoga right now.
Sounds like your girlfriend has a lot of positive influence on your health.
She's trying.
If you could work for any person in the world, who would it be and what job would you want?
Well, there's a reason why I work for myself.
Understood. That being said,
so it's funny, if that Maverick stuff didn't come out recently, the answer to my question might have been Mr. Cuban, but
no longer.
Man, he disappointed a lot of people. And I still think he's great at what he does. He just was completely disconnected from the organization.
I'll accept Mark Cuban as your answer.
No, it's not my answer. It's definitely not my answer. I'd want to go work for Steven Spielberg and learn all sides of how you think about his career, and for anyone listening who loves film and story, watch the Spielberg doc on HBO. It's awesome. The guy started making films in the late 60s, like on handheld little cinema cams. And then he makes Jaws, and like you fast forward to now, he's making Ready Player One. Like, it's mastering the craft, but it's the evolution of craft over time with technology, and being able to tell stories that you're passionate about through the different eras and different lenses. And safe to say, one of my favorite directors, and idolize him for many reasons.
It's a good one. If you were hosting this podcast, what is a question that you would want to ask other 40-year-olds?
I love the dinner table question. So, you plus 5, your dream dinner table, who would it be? I'm a big fan of that one because it always sparks good conversation.
Who would yours be?
What are our parameters?
I think anyone living.
Living?
Yeah. And would you look at this question differently than the road trip question, where this one you would kind of extend
of
celebrity,
course. Of course.
people you
definitely,
want to get to
definitely.
know?
Greg Popovich.
Our next president, hopefully.
He's the next guy after Spielberg I'd want to work for, man. I mean, if Greg Popovich ran for office, I'd go work for him for free and figure out how to make money. Hopefully no one holds me to that if it ever happened. But Popovich. Barack Obama. And I'm not like, do I respect him? Yes. Am I like die hard? He did nothing wrong? No. But what he went through to get there and then become president of the United States for 2 terms. Imagine what you can learn in those conversations. Denzel Washington. And Julianne Moore.
Interesting poll.
Huge fan of the craft, but like the talent level is clearly there. Like Julianne Moore was like in acting. It's not like she grew up this beautiful young star. Mm-hmm. How's this for a poll? Julianne Moore is the nurse in the hospital in The Fugitive when she figures out that Harrison Ford shouldn't be there when he's Dr. Richard Kimball and going through and saves the kid. She's the one calling security on him.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Nice.
Pre-Boogie Nights. Yeah.
We've reached our last question.
Oh, already?
Can you believe that? You chose a song to play us out of here today. What song and why?
I chose Mass Appeal. And
By whom?
Gangstar.
I'm familiar with their work.
I know you are. I chose it for a few reasons. I chose it, like literally the meaning and the things I've tried to do and create in my life. I've always wanted to reach the level of those words, Mass Appeal. And, I love music, but like my music knowledge and my exposure to music is nowhere near what it has been for film, right? So, in the 90s, I knew I was listening to cool hip hop, but I didn't understand it, and I didn't know who was singing it, and I didn't take the time to learn. And then when I moved my life to New York, I started to do that more and more. And I'll never forget when I was living above this bar on the east side, which is no longer, it was called Three Steps, if you were ever there. It was quite an experience. It was on 2nd Avenue between 18th and 19th Street. And that was like when like my partying was reaching its final like peak, but I was like, oh, I'm grounded now because it's in my basement, so I'm not running around to the club, and it was like its own little club in there. And I remember one night walking in there like, tuned up, and I walked in with my boy to a packed party to Mass Appeal, and I looked around and I'm like, this is my fucking movie right now. This is it. And I used the instrumentals for Mass Appeal on so many test edits and things, and it's just an amazing song. So,
it's a great one.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Thank you, brother.
This was fun. Where can people check you out online?
So, Instagram, enewfilms, ENEWFILMS. I changed that from @CoachEnew, which is still my Twitter handle. That's not easy to change. So Enew Films Instagram, @CoachEnew Twitter, and I'll be very active on both platforms as we get into basketball season with both basketball and story. And if you want to see samples of my work, enewfilms.com.
Awesome. Eric Newman, everyone. Another episode of Past the 40. Thanks for joining me. Love that we did this in person. A lot of fun. Thanks, guys. See you next time.
Cool.
I was trying to